You're listening to the Learn Like a CPA podcast, where we talk about all things real estate, tax strategy, and personal finance. Whether you're a real estate investor looking to scale your portfolio, or you're an individual wanting to take your financial freedom journey to the next level, this is a podcast for you. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about a few different miscellaneous topics. We're going to talk about dollar cost averaging and why that's better than lump sum investing. We're going to talk about how to buy your first house in your 20s. We're going to switch gears and talk about rental real estate tax. And we're also going to talk about the stepped up in basis rule. So pretty cool stuff. So to start off, lump sum investing versus dollar cost averaging. So to break it down a little bit, dollar cost averaging is where you assign a fixed dollar amount, in most cases a certain percentage of your salary, and you invest that same amount every single month, no matter which month it is, no matter what's going on, whether the market's down, the market's up, coronavirus, World War III pending, you're going to invest that same fixed amount, whether it be a dollar amount or a percentage, every single month, and you're not going to change course. Versus lump sum investing is where, hey, I have this dollar amount, and I'm going to invest it this month. I'm going to invest it when I get it, no matter what. I'm just going to invest as much money as possible at this particular date. So what that might look like is person A, person B, they both have $6,000 to invest. Well, person A is a dollar cost investor, dollar cost averaging. They would invest $500 a month for 12 months versus person B, if they're a lump sum investor, they may wait to invest that $500 a month and just invest that total $6,000. Or they might wait 12 months to invest, or they might just invest their money up front and not invest anything for the rest of the year. The reason why dollar cost averaging is better than lump sum investing has more to do with psychic than it actually does investing returns or growth or interest rate, anything to do with that. It's because dollar cost averaging allows you to build proper habits and discipline necessary in order to achieve a large amount of wealth. If you have that mindset of, hey, no matter what's going on in the stock market, no matter what's going on in life, I'm going to invest a certain percentage of my income or a certain dollar amount each month, it eliminates a lot of those rational decision makings, looking at the stock market, seeing it down, seeing it go up. I've had tons of people say, hey, is now the right time to invest when the market is sky high? Maybe I'm buying in at too high. I've also had tons of people, you normally see it more on this side, who have say, hey, the market is way too low. Should I invest now because the market's low? What if it continues to go down? So you have people on both sides of the spectrum. So where if you are in the lump sum investing category of people, you're always going to be asking those questions of, hey, is now the right time to invest or not? That's why dollar cost averaging eliminates risk of fear. It eliminates instability in markets and overall makes you a better investor because no matter what happens that month, you're still going to invest the same amount of money. There was two case studies. So first, Fidelity did a study over a 20-year period from 2000 to 2020. They found out that the two highest percent of returns for somebody's account, the first highest group of people were dead people who were passed away and their accounts were just earning and growing and nobody was touching and nobody was managing the money. Dead people had the highest percent of returns out of their account. The next group of people that had the highest percent of returns were actually people who forgot their password or their login information to their account. So it needs to say the buy and hold investor, or the investor that makes the least amount of decisions on a month-to-month basis, is going to come out ahead against that of the investor that's making irrational decisions, switching their investment strategy on a month-to-month basis, that's not holding for the long term. They're going to come out ahead, right? The dollar cost averager is going to come out ahead over the lump sum investor. Also, there was a study where they said that if we go back to that same example that I used, say I'm going to invest $6,000 this year. I'm either going to do $500 each month or I'm going to do $6,000 all at once. If you, over a 20-year span, even if you were able to save all that money and invest it on the day before the largest stock increase that particular year, you would still come out behind the dollar cost average investor. So if for 2000 to 2020, if I was either able to invest $500 a month for 12 months or $6,000 all at once, the dollar cost average investor comes out ahead, even if the lump sum investor is able to invest their money the day before the largest increase each year. So if 2000, the largest increase is 13%, maybe 2005, the largest increase was 20%, and they knew exactly when to perfectly time the market, the dollar cost averager actually still comes out ahead. And I find that very fascinating that even somebody who knows the exact timing of the market still comes out behind. A few numbers from Smart Wallet. So Smart Wallet says that the average retirement account balance of a 65-year-old is only $120,000. We have to do better as a society, as financial mentors, as financial students. We have to do better as a society to influence other people to start investing early. $120,000 at retirement age, that doesn't even cover the cost of healthcare that's expected from a 60-year-old until their death, right? Let alone their income needs, their house, their utilities, their groceries. That money is not going to cut it. It's not difficult to amass an extreme amount of wealth through dollar cost averaging. And I have some numbers in front of me. So from age 25 to 65, you only have to invest $150 a month at a 10% rate of return. And this 10% rate of return is achievable. It's actually happened over the last 90 years of the stock market. On average, it's about 10.1%. So if you're able to achieve a 10% rate of return, investing $150 a month from age 25 to 65, you will have $1 million at age 65. Now, why it's so important to start investing early is that same numbers, but from age 35 to 65. So let's say instead of investing at 25, I start investing at 35. Instead of only investing $150 a month, I need to invest $450 a month from age 35 to age 65. Just because I decide to wait 10 extra years means I need to invest 3 times the amount of money to achieve the same goal. Versus if I would have just started investing when I was 25, I would achieve that millionaire status with only having to invest $150 a month. Now, guys, I don't know about you, but $150 a month is pretty easy. I think it's pretty easy. I mean, I spend that probably every single grocery trip. I know people who probably spend that at the bars in a weekend or 2 weekends, right? $150 a month from age 25 to 65, that's going to change your wealth building journey, change your family tree. But we talk about, well, what if you don't start investing until you're 35? Then it's $450 a month. And what if you don't start investing until you're 45? If you don't start investing until you're 45, that number becomes $1,350 a month from age 45 to 65 to achieve $1 million. So needless to say, this is why it's important to dollar cost average, build those habits, build the discipline early on to invest a percentage, a dollar amount of your income per month into retirement accounts, into taxable brokerage accounts, so you can be wealthy and you can have financial freedom. It doesn't take much. Small amounts each month can add up to a lot over time. So switching gears, we're going to talk about how to buy your first house in your 20s. I get a lot of questions from friends, from family of what are the sort of steps or the processes involved in order to buy your first house, whether it's a personal residence or an investment property. So typically, the first one is going to be income. The first thing that the bank's going to look for is your income. Are you W-2? Are you self-employed? If you're a W-2 employee, it's a lot easier to get a bank loan than it is if you're self-employed. If you're a W-2 employee, they'll typically look at your last year's tax return. They're going to look at your pay stubs to make sure that everything matches up. And they're going to see your income potential coming in, maybe your salary or maybe your hourly. And you say, hey, here's what I've been making the last few months. However, if you're self-employed, typically they're going to want to see 2 years of tax returns, 2 years of self-employment income in order to give you a loan. So my self-employed friends know exactly how hard it is to acquire a house if you're self-employed. It makes it a lot harder from a due diligence perspective for a bank to give you a loan. As far as the income to loan ratio, banks will loan you a house, will give you money for a house at 5 to 6 times your salary amount. So if I'm making $50,000 a year, there are banks out there that will give me up to $300,000 potential of a loan amount. Now, that doesn't mean if you make $50,000 a year and a bank will let you buy a $300,000 house, that you should buy a $300,000 house. Typically, for wealth building purposes, you should try to keep it in about 3 to 4x your salary range, right? So if I'm making $50,000, I should try to keep that house in between $150,000 to $200,000. And the reason being is if your house payment is a substantial amount of your monthly income, it makes doing other things more difficult, such as buying groceries, keeping the lights on, investing in retirement. It makes other activities harder to do the more fixed amount of debt you have going towards a monthly payment. The second thing they're going to look at is your credit history. That's why I do recommend to set up credit cards early, maybe even sometimes in college, to build that credit history, even if it is just using it to fill up your gas or buy a Mountain Dew, something to build credit history, because although not super important, but the difference between a 600 credit score and a 750 credit score could mean the difference between interest rates and you getting a loan or not. So credit is going to be the next thing that you're going to want to keep in check. The third is going to be your debt to income ratio. So this is a little bit back to what I was talking about, how the amount of money that you have coming in per month versus the amount of money you have going out for a mortgage payment. Now, banks will loan up to 40 to 45% of your debt to income, of your monthly income. However, you should try to keep that number down to about 25 to 30%. So what does that mean? Debt to income is pretty calculated by your total fixed debt payments. So if I have credit cards, student loans, car payments, and then my additional mortgage payment divided by how much I'm making per month. That's going to be my debt to income. So if I have $500 in a $500 car payment per month and I make $2,000 a year, right, my debt to income would be 25%. And the bank's going to look at this because the bank's going to see, well, hey, you already have this debt, this credit card, student loan, car payment. How are we so sure that you're actually going to make due on our house payment? And so I have seen friends, family, other people lose out on in the due diligence stage of buying a house because their debt to income gets thrown off, right? The fourth thing is you got to get your savings right. So depending on what type of loan you do, most people will do conventional loans, maybe 5-10% down. You also have to factor in closing costs, which can be up to 3% of the loan amount in certain cases. So if I want to buy a $200,000 house, right, and I want to put 10% down, I'm going to need the $20,000 down payment, plus I'm going to need 3% of closing costs. So I'm gonna need $16,000 to buy that house. The fifth one, and most often overlooked when buying a house, is your life goals or expectations. So what do you plan on doing in the short term and the long term? Is this just a starter home? Maybe you have it before you have a child or two and you're just using that to build a bridge, or are you going to live in that house long term for 10, 20 years? Think about your life goals and your expectations before you go buying a house. Switching gears into the rental real estate tax space, we're going to talk about what's called personal use of a rental property. And this is going to be more important for my short-term rental investors than it is my long-term rental or buy and hold investors, because there exists something in the code where you are not able to use a property that you also rent out for personal use. And it's found in section 280A, and it's personal use of a rental property. And the rule is 14 days or 10% of the total rental days. So the greater of 14 days or 10% of the rental days. So to give you an example, if I rent out my house for 200 days out of the year, 10% of 200 is 20. So I'm able to stay in that house up to 20 days for personal use, okay? If I rent out the house for 80 days, 10% of 80 is 8, but I still have that 14 because it's the greater of 14 or 10% of the fair rental days. So even though I only rented it out for 80 days out of the year, I'm still good to go, so as long as my usage is below 14. Well, why does this matter? And it's because if you're trying to deduct expenses for that rental property, you're trying to take your interest, your utilities, your taxes, your depreciation. If you run afoul of these personal use rules and the IRS sees you using that rental property too much for personal use, they're going to limit the amount of deductions that you're able to take on that property. And actually, if you run afoul of that rule, what they have is what are called expense ordering rules, where they make you add back those expenses for determining your taxable income. So if you blow these rules out of the water, you're going to have to add back depreciation, you're going to have to add back utilities, taxes, interest. You're going to have to add all these things back. So it's very important, especially for people who are generating lots of depreciation, to not run afoul of these Section 280A rules. For a little bit more clarification, a personal day is something where you, or maybe you bring your family to use it. That's going to be a personal day, any day where you don't have any work attributed to the property. However, if you work on the property for at least 4 hours that particular day, it doesn't count as a personal use day. So if I bought a property and let's say it took me 10, 11 days to stage it, set it up, decorate it, as long as I'm working 4 hours each day, I can do whatever I want the rest of the day, and that's not going to count against me as a personal use day. So I can do what I need to do at the property for those 4 hours, 5 hours out of the day, and then I can enjoy it for myself, and it's not going to count against me. So those are the personal use rules when it entails rental real estate. The last topic today is going to be what's called the step up in basis. The step up in basis is so important from a wealth building perspective because it allows us to fulfill a strategy known as buy, borrow, and die. So I try not to get too morbid on the podcast. However, when you pass away and your heirs receive your assets, 99% of the time your heirs are going to receive your assets completely tax-free with a stepped up basis. And this is, to put this in layman's terms, this is the best example I have for this. If my grandma buys a house in the 40s or the 50s, and let's say she bought it for $50,000, and now that house is worth $500,000. Well, if she were to pass away, and I'm the heir of that property, I receive that property at fair market value, $500,000, and the tax-free stepped up in basis. So if I was able to walk away, if I was to sell that property the same day I got it for $500,000 and I sold it for $500,000. So at the end of the day, I can walk away completely tax-free. Where the stepped up in basis occurs is if I bought that $40,000 property, that $50,000 property, and I was to sell it, I would have a capital gain on the difference between $500,000 and whatever I paid it for. But when people pass away with assets, their heirs receive them tax-free, stepped up in basis. So when you're looking from a wealth building perspective, you might have parents, grandparents that own real estate. Do not buy it from them. Let it go through state, and let them, again, we don't want to get too morbid, but let them pass away with the real estate because it will receive a tax-free stepped up in basis. Otherwise, in that example, if I was to purchase that property for $50,000 and now it's worth $500,000 and I wanted to sell it, I would be on the hook for a capital gain between the difference of $500,000 and $50,000. So from a wealth building perspective, the stepped up in basis allows people to buy, borrow, and die, right? Because if I'm able to buy a property for $50,000, I'm renting it out, I'm fixing it up, I'm getting cash flow, I'm getting tax benefits, that property is appreciating in value, it's going up and up and up, and all while I'm able to borrow against the appreciated value of that property. Maybe I do refinances, I do HELOCs. I'm able to pull money out of that property as it's appreciating, and all while not realizing a taxable event. And so now that $50,000 property goes up to $500,000. If I was to sell it, I would have a capital gain. If I pass away with the property, it goes to my heirs completely tax-free, stepped up in basis, and they do not have to worry about a tax bill. So that's the stepped up in basis in a nutshell. It's a very powerful wealth building tool for families to understand and realize. And this doesn't just happen with real estate. This can be taxable brokerage accounts, certain assets. 99% of the time, people will receive assets tax-free, stepped up in basis if they inherit them. Thanks for watching the show today, guys. If you have any questions, please leave them below or reach out to me on Instagram and Twitter @LearnLikeACPA, and we'll see you in the next podcast.